we are just about there. So we are going to get started now with our webinar with Shari Pash. My name is Amy and I'm with the GrowthZone marketing team. And thanks so much to Shari for joining us today and making this webinar possible. It's been a while since we worked together and we are excited to have her back on screen with us. We're going to have a screen. Yeah, we have the screen share. Look at that. We are going to be recording the webinar. So everyone that registered is going to receive the recording whether or not they attended. So you can look for that in your inbox within the next 24 hours. It will likely be tomorrow. So it will go to the email address that you used when you registered for the webinar. So give it until tomorrow afternoon. And if you don't receive it at that point, you can email us at marketing@growthzone.com. Let's see, our next slide is the chat. I know that everyone's been on Zoom a million times, but just going to say it one more time that if you would like to chat with your peers and the other attendees, be sure to set your settings so they are showing to everyone. If you do have something just to communicate to us, that's fine. And Q&A will go into the Q&A panel, please. All right, let's move on. Everyone that is attending today will receive CAE credit. That will end up in your inbox as well. It should, next 24 hours, definitely. It's not gonna have your name on it. It's fine. ASAE says that's the way it goes. So that's only for live attendees will be receiving that CAE credit. We would like to invite you to join us for a live online group demo to find out a little bit more about GrowthZone Association Management Software. There's also on our homepage, you can see here with these handy arrows, that we have a interactive product tour as well. So check out our homepage, growthzone.com, and see what we are all about. All right. The Knowledge Library. We actually work really hard to, look at my arrows, we work really hard to make sure that we are providing resources that are useful and valuable to association, chamber, everyone that's staff everywhere that's a membership-based organization. We have all sorts of resources, all of our previous webinars on demand, workbooks, ebooks, checklists, you name it. So I encourage you to check that out. And once we have this all set up, this recording, you'll be able to find it there as well. All right, so just one more thing here. If we have time at the end, we will have a brief Q&A. If you have questions for Shari, please put those in the Q&A panel. Otherwise, they sometimes get lost in the chat. So we will try to have her answer as many as possible. And anything she can't get to, we will email her afterwards. So make sure you have your Q&A panel open, and let's move on to the reason that you're all here. So we're going to get started. Shari, who I'm sure most of you know, but Shari Pash is the founder of Strategic Solutions for Growth, and that is a training company headquartered in Grand Rapids, Michigan. She served as the VP of Sales for the Greater Lansing CVB before beginning Strategic Solutions for Growth in 2010 and continuing her role as an industry professional, coach, and trainer. Her customized multi-step programs implement tools and reporting mechanisms to strengthen member engagement and new members, get them going from the ground up. She is a major conference presenter. We see her all over the country and is regularly invited to share her knowledge at state and provincial conferences across the US and Canada. I know she's had a really busy summer. She has earned numerous industry awards of excellence throughout her career, well-deserved. And she is here today to talk about volunteering in the new normal and focus on re-engaging your board of directors. And we are so excited to have her with us. Hi, Shari.
Hey, Amy, thanks so much for having me and welcome everybody. We're going to just kick right in, okay? Thanks, GrowthZone. Amy, I appreciate you coordinating all these details and getting us going today.
Awesome. Have fun.
Thank you. All right, everyone. Okay, now we know it's always different on the webinar than it is like at a conference or something. So we'll try to keep this as engaging as I can for you all. But for those of you, maybe we've crossed paths at one of your state conferences. I do a lot with ACCE and IOM as well. But I've worked with a lot of nonprofits as well. And that's where that membership growth is kind of morphed into volunteer growth at this point. So I know there's a lot of chambers on the webinar today, as well as state associations. So I'll try to keep it adapting to both of you. And again, I know a lot of you probably have some really fantastic tools you're already using for volunteering and engagement, but I really think it's important that we, in order to reignite our volunteers, that we have to have our foundation really solid. A lot of you who know me from my membership work know that I talk a lot about your foundation being solid before you can build up your membership. The same thing with volunteerism. So I'm going to be talking a lot about the foundation that you have set for your volunteers. Then we have to find those right volunteers, right? And really show them that, this is a key role. We need to treat it as paid positions almost, our volunteers. So we're going to talk about that. How do we go from chasing and begging people to be a volunteer to hopefully motivating them too? So again, having that organized volunteer program is really going to be more appealing for your members. It's, they don't want to join or get involved with an opportunity that's kind of dysfunctional. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, and really, how do you become very intentional in your volunteer work? Okay, I want to start with this quote from Eleanor Roosevelt. Great minds discuss ideas, average minds discuss events, and small minds discuss people. So we want to make sure that, like, at your board meetings, think about what is your board discussing. Great minds discuss ideas. And that's a whole nother topic, is board retreats. But I always like to just kind of start with that, because that's one of our key volunteer opportunities is our board of directors. And we want to make sure that they're staying strategic in their conversations. And with that, again, to reignite or enhance your board, boards have been performing in a variety of levels this past 18 months, it seems like. And we want to make sure your board is a strategic asset to your organization, right? Recently, there was an article in Forbes Coaches Council, and they talked about the vision, shared purpose, working together, and the behaviors. And when you think about it, your vision, it really can unite your board, or it can be a dividing factor, really. So it's important that you talk about your vision throughout the year with your volunteers, but with your board especially. And that vision is what provides that focus and direction for the board, for your organization's board, the staff and members, all of you are using that. And that shared purpose is what holds you together, right? That shared purpose is so important, and we have to be able to communicate that. But it really connects and keeps the staff and the board really working together, definitely in the good times, but definitely through this last year and a half in these really challenging times. It was really important that you had that shared purpose. So again, in order to mobilize, I think the staff and the board, that shared purpose has to be very clear and communicate. And that's how, again, it kind of goes back to this foundation of our volunteers understanding kind of what your organization stands for. So again, a lot of you are on the different forums. I know you see a lot of, when you think about those unmatched expectations, this whole work together principle. And again, we've got to make sure that our staff and board, that you're working together, right? You all know that, because if we're not, there's that risk of having those unspoken expectations, right? Those unwritten rules that are happening, that can lead to dysfunction and really to disappointment, loss of trust, unmet expectations. When I see boards and staff that are having a challenge, it's usually coming down to those things, that there is that loss of trust and such. So again, we want to look at that behavior piece, right? How do you motivate the behavior for your volunteers? Thinking about each leader and helping them have an awareness of their productive and unproductive maybe behaviors. Some of you have those boards that are fantastic. A lot of you do. But again, remember, behaviors on their own can impact that individual, but they can also impact your board culture. So again, making sure that we have a safe culture in our boardrooms. So those are just things I think are kind of basic. A lot of you know your foundation for your board and board orientations and such, but we're going to talk a little bit about those things as we go forward here. But I'm going to bring a little science into our volunteer piece. As we ignite our volunteers, we can do this by understanding their motivation, right? So Gil Clary with College of St. Catherine and Mark Snyder with University of Minnesota had done this volunteer research project. And I go to this because we have to be intentional in our volunteer kind of motivations, just like we do when we're recruiting members, right? We can only recruit members based on their motivations, their priorities to join, to invest, And really the same for your volunteers. So it's these assumptions that we have to work with that, again, the people are purposeful, planful, goal directed, right? Basically, they're going to have different needs, right? We need to know their motivation before we can motivate them. And we need to make sure this is documented. But again, same thing, they're going to have similar and kind of people, they may do similar things for different reasons. We know that, right? So again, we have to understand that people for the same volunteer opportunity are going to have different needs, and we've got to be able to motivate and have that conversation. So we're going to create tools on this down in a little bit here. But again, there can be one or more motivation for them. Volunteering is that experience. We have to match the needs to the goals. So basically, it's just saying those assumptions that you should be thinking about for all of your volunteer opportunities. And when you think about this, again, these researchers identified 6 personal and social functions that people can achieve through committing to volunteerism for an organization, right? So they can be motivated by their value system, right? Personal value system or their company's value system. We have to remember it could be one or the other, or it could be both when we're talking about that they're joining for that or volunteering for that value piece, that value function. There's the understanding function, right? Maybe they want to learn more and be a part of your business community, your industry. They want to be part of the climate of change for your industry or for your community, but they need the understanding. That's where they're going to kind of pick that up and learn. Opportunities to grow and develop professional development type thing, classes and training. It could be that career and business growth. And again, we know the social network and the business network is really a critical piece, that some are doing that for the social function. So again, the protective function, not so much. That might be more for those charity causes, things like that. But again, understanding those motivations is really important. And again, I think this gives us some ideas on implementing these 6 functions. And I know that Amy's going to send this PowerPoint out to you as well, so that you can kind of have some of these notes on it. But again, each of you are going to have a different way, a different focus that you're going to use some of these things. So, but these are also many of the same ways that you're going to engage with a membership investment, not just your volunteerism, right? So again, thinking, this is going to help us think a little bit more that our volunteer needs, we need to be more intentional about that, okay? So what we look at the values, again, connecting your organization mission, personal values. Again, we talked about the career piece, providing specific skills development. Think about each of your volunteer opportunities and how are they fitting to this? Are you offering these different value pieces that members would be looking for? Again, the understanding, personalized in-service training and reflection. So I just want to encourage you to really look at all these. We have a lot to cover today, so I'm not going to go into detail on these, but just think about your different volunteer opportunities as we go through this today, and think about, can you match these up? Can you talk about each of your volunteer opportunities in these different elements? Another thing, this is, kind of heard kind of what the research said and all, but this is kind of my list, understanding volunteer motivations. They have to believe and support your organization. They have to support your mission or the industry, your community. So it's really important that we find those people who do believe in it, improving a situation, right? This is going to make a difference in your community. It's going to make a difference in the industry, making a difference in business climate, shaping public policy, maybe, personal connections. There's all these different motivations why people want to volunteer. And it's really important, and we'll talk about near the end of the session, documenting this on your GrowthZone or Chamber Master custom fields. It's important that we know these different fields and understand what their motivation is and can go to it when we need to. So again, I know a lot of you know some of these things, but again, we wanted these reminders to keep us on track with this information. So now let's look at, it goes hand in hand with their motivation, is how, motivating and reigniting those volunteers. Again, the communication piece, proactive communication, understanding their priorities we just talked about. Is volunteering a part of their job, or is it personal to them? It's really important because your conversation is going to be different on there, and the way you're going to sell that volunteer opportunity. So again, remember, when you're proactive communicating with volunteers, that's one thing they hear, is that there's not communication to the volunteers. Is it email? Is it text? Is it social media? Is there a Facebook group just for that group, for that volunteer group? So again, just communicate, keep them in the loop. That's when we hear some of the things that, these are things that ways to motivate, right? Peer-to-peer motivation and accountability. I hear people say that they have in their ambassadors or their board meeting, they have to bring who they've recruited this last month, because that peer-to-peer motivation can be really strong. Recognizing and appreciation, we know that these are some of the foundations we're talking about again here before we get rolling strong. Recognize and appreciate. Connect how they impact your mission. They want to understand that they're making a difference, especially that next generation volunteer. They want to know that they're making a difference and the work that they're doing is helping their industry, their community. So make sure that we're messaging it along those lines as well. You want to consider the strengths and weaknesses, their interests, their all those sort of things, the skills that they're going to bring to this volunteer. That can be really motivating. So again, you can read the rest of that there, but the things that kind of I guess would say unmotivate, if that's a word, but it's not motivating, it is underutilized. Someone volunteers to be really active or to help out and they're underutilized. Maybe there's unclear direction. We're going to talk about that, unclear direction and expectations, just like a staff person, right, on your team. No sense of real impact. The work that I'm doing through this volunteer isn't really impacting anything. And just feelings of being maybe ignored and unappreciated. So think about your volunteers. Are any of these things happening with them right now? That's a big part of the remotivation and reigniting your volunteers, is to make sure they do have the clear direction and expectations, that they feel like they're making a difference, and that they are appreciated and not being ignored. So really important piece there. Another thing, as we look at reigniting, we first have to make sure we have the right volunteers. We have to make sure that we have the right people doing the right thing. It's kind of the EOS concept. Some of you have heard of that, the entrepreneurial operating system. Fantastic system. We're not going to go into that today, but it talks about having the right people in the right chairs, basically. And then tapping into the strengths of your volunteers and your members. So one thing is to keep our the diversity in volunteers, just like you do in your members. I know there's a lot of different variations. Many of you have something like this that you're using, but I know when I'm at conferences, a lot of people ask for this type of a tool. So it's important that we kind of have this tool, and I'll be glad to email it out at the end. If you do this text to sign up at the end, I'll send this out to you. But basically, it's going through and it's looking at the types of volunteers you need. And this example that I'll be sending out has like the board, government relations committee, maybe membership committee or ambassadors. Maybe you have a conference committee or a trade show committee. We want to make sure that we have this chart of volunteers put together so that you can see where those gaps are of what you're looking for. Is it a general? You need to bring in, more of that next generation in. The skill sets that you're looking for, perhaps the demographics of your volunteers, for sure. Influence with, I love that one. The influence. Who do they have influence with, and who do you need influence with? Perhaps that you can bring in a volunteer. Some of this is the example you see right up there is for your board, and maybe you need someone. If you're a home builder association, maybe you need an architect who's on your board or something. And for your chambers, you've got all types of skill sets. Maybe you need someone who can help with legal, so you need an attorney on your board. You all know these are the basics. You don't have this tool, a tool like this to keep all of your volunteer opportunities diverse, do sign up at the end and I'll make sure to get you this spreadsheet, okay? Because it's great to have that, especially for your board, to keep that the skill sets on your board continuous over the terms of your members. Okay, so this one is I think one of the key things I really feel can make a difference with our volunteerism is we have to understand our opportunities for volunteers, right? I'm sure a lot of you have a sponsorship catalog. I won't do the show of hands thing, but a lot of you have the sponsorship catalog. What if we were to create a volunteer catalog? When I was teaching the class at IOM on volunteers, this is something we talked about, and is one of the biggest takeaways was we need to have a volunteer catalog that you can put onto your website so that a member company or an organization can look through your volunteer catalog and pick out where do they want to have their team volunteer. But first, there's a few things we have to do before we put that together. We have to really understand our opportunities, know what they are, then how are we going to sell those volunteer opportunities? From small, every small volunteer opportunity you have to your large, short-term and long-term. But again, each of your organizations is going to have different needs. Some will have a public policy, some different committees, things like that. But again, once you create some of the tools I'm going to be talking about, once you do that, you only have to do small updates going forward, and it keeps it a very sustainable tool. So it's really a key step. If you can take time, maybe the holiday season's coming up before we know it, I can't believe it. Maybe that's a time you can take some time out and really look at spending some time to create some of these tools. So basically, for opportunities, we create a list of those opportunities available at your organization, your chamber, your association, and we update that annually. So creating that profile for each, these are a few things that we want to put into that. And this has really worked great for a lot of the volunteer conferences I've spoke at, as well as the clients I work with. But when you look at this, create the opportunity. So on the top of the page you're typing in your computer on, the name of the opportunity, maybe it's a board of directors. What's the purpose and goal for this particular volunteer opportunity? What's your desired outcomes from this? Measurable and accountable. You want to make it measurable and accountable, right? How many volunteers are needed? How many are long-term, short-term? Now, if it's a board, we know what that looks like, but think about all your different, if you have to do a golf outing committee, all the different things that you need volunteers for, the skill sets that are needed, time availability that's needed. And is it geographic? Do you need them from a certain area? Do they need to come into your office? Or is it something they can do virtual or digital? And again, think about this could be someone who just sits at your reception desk, a volunteer that does that. All of your opportunities, we want to start to capture on to your profile. You want to define the type of member that would thrive in this opportunity and describe where you're going to find this type of member, from what type of member segments. Maybe it's even a certain position within a business that would thrive in that type of a volunteer opportunity. And does this opportunity provide exposure or community impact or industry impact? So it's important to know, is it a virtual or digital or in person? Is it statewide if you're a state organization? Is it local? So once you have this tool, again, it's minor updates we're talking about, but as you create this opportunity profile, this is where you can create that catalog of all of your opportunities. Now, you may not necessarily list out all the things that are in your profile, but you're going to put these opportunities in the catalog. And I'm going to show you in a few minutes here about the benefit statements that you want to include then. Because again, how can members be involved at all different levels too? You have a lot of members will join and say, I want to get involved. And we don't really have something we can show them to go through and figure out where they can fit in your organization. So just as an example, again, these are some volunteer opportunities. Think through yours throughout the year, from board of directors to policy, different committees, admin support, ambassadors, small groups you might have, business expo, community events, industry events, your training and education. There's so many opportunities. So for each of you, I really challenge you to take that time and map out every volunteer opportunity you have. And when you have the time to create that profile for each one, just like you take it as seriously as you do hiring a staff member or the work that you put into bringing a new member in, because isn't this a huge engagement tool for us, right? So we want to make sure that we are taking the same effort and intentional effort that we do in recruiting members and staff people as we do with our volunteers. So again, so just like membership, sometimes we'll do a call out for volunteers. Other times we have to be very intentional and we know who we want to target for those opportunities. Again, you kind of have those opportunities created. How do you recruit now some volunteers to fill those opportunities? Again, things to think about. Do you need a large volume of volunteers? Do you just need a couple volunteers? Some of you have opportunities where you need 30 or 40 volunteers. If you're doing some of those festivals or community events or a really large industry event. Again, virtual, is it year round? Is it one project, one major event? Again, opportunity and goals will impact your strategy for how you're going to recruit. But if we're going to sell our opportunities, because that's what we really have to do, because don't we find sometimes, I won't have you raise your hands, but I know I usually see a lot of hands go up when I ask this question. How many of you feel like you're begging and chasing somebody to volunteer? I'm sure there's a lot of people kind of nodding along. Maybe some of you don't run into that, but most are saying, I'm just begging. I'm just thankful to have a volunteer. Forget about all this other stuff you're talking about. But if we get more intentional, we can be more strategic in our volunteer recruitment, more or less. So again, we want to go from begging and chasing people to really creating opportunities where we talk about the benefits that will be important to them to receive, to be a part of the volunteer, just like you do with membership, right? Do we chase and convince people to join your organization, or do we motivate and compel them based on value points that are important to them, based on what you've learned? So same thing, we don't want to chase and convince people to be a member. We don't want to beg and chase them to be a volunteer. We want to be very strategic in our approach to. So again, once some of these tools we're going to be talking about, these are great intern projects. If any of you are able to have an intern come in and do a short-term project or long-term projects, some of these things we're talking about are really going to be cool projects for them to work on. So again, instead of just listing out your volunteer opportunities, we need 3 volunteers to work on this industry event, or 3 volunteers to help us at the golf outing, or be on the ambassador team. We want to write out benefit statements, the benefit of that opportunity for them to volunteer. So statements, these benefit statements I'm talking about, are basically your selling points. And how do you talk about those opportunities? So I'm just going to give you an example of one. A lot of chambers I know, and I know for state associations, you have other examples you could put with this. A TRC committee, the Total Resource Campaign type committee. It's kind of, for those of you who don't do this, it's a big group of volunteers that work to sell your sponsorships and bring funds in. So basically, the question we'd want to ask somebody that we're considering recruiting for this would be, are you looking for a way to connect one-on-one with our members, with these businesses in town, or with industry professionals? And then you want to have that benefit statement, not where you're going to read like we're here, but just so you're very comfortable when you talk about it. Our TRC members find that as they work with businesses and members, they really strengthen those personal business relationships with that company and the person. The TRC committee can be a tool for your own business development and growth, and also serves to build our business region and make an impact with the Chamber's goals. All in all, a benefit to the business community, members, yourself, your company. So we want to know that every volunteer opportunity you have, that you can put that benefit statement in there, so that when you go to when you make that catalog, that's where you're going to use some of the wording from your benefit statements to show TRC committee, and then talk a little bit about how you sell that volunteer opportunity. So often we just kind of talk to somebody, we say, hey, can you volunteer? We're looking for someone who has time, who breathes quite often. And we need to be much more intentional on matching what that member needs to the volunteer opportunity. Okay, so again, you can take this and do benefit statements for all of your opportunities that you have. If you wrote those out, like the first step we were talking about, create those opportunity profiles. Now write the benefit statements for each one of those. And when it's written, it helps keep it sustainable for all of your staff and teams going forward. And it doesn't just go by the wayside. It stays consistent in your messaging too. And again, just like your membership benefit statements, your volunteer statements as well. That's what I spend a lot of time helping my clients work with, is creating these different benefit statements. It's what we talk about. It's how we sell a membership investment. It's how we sell a volunteer opportunity. So it's really important we have these foundational tools, because when we're recruiting based on value for our volunteers, that's where you're going to see sustainable volunteers, and volunteers who get excited to be a part of it because they understand the expectation and they're getting what they want as far as an expectation as well. All right, so overcoming hindrances or objections from prospective volunteers. This is one at conferences, we get to have an open discussion. And I know I'm coming to some of your states for conference over the next month or two. And this is the fun part during conference. We get to just roundtable and discuss these. It can be, some of the hindrances and objections we hear. I would love for us to be able to talk some more about. I'm going to throw a few out there just for at least if you, during the Q&A time, you could even share some others, or in the chat or chat area, share some thoughts of how you handle them so others can learn from what you're doing as well. But again, I think a lot of times we see it's that I don't have time, and it can be very daunting to think about a long-term volunteer opportunity. And we're finding currently, especially that next generation, they're looking for those short-term opportunities, and that's where when you have the opportunity profile to see who it fits, you can find that demographic that's looking for that short term. I can do a task force, I can do a project, but I can't commit to 1 to 3 years. I know for our board members, it's a big commitment. I'm working with a couple boards right now where some of the board members are struggling with having to make a 6-year commitment. That's a long, hard opportunity there. So, but we know we need to have those opportunities still. No time. I don't have time to be that volunteer, even if it's that short term. We want to understand, does this opportunity better their company, their business, or is it more of a personal thing? Because that's going to depend how we kind of overcome this with them. What is their why? Don't we all make time for what's important to us? It really is. I can tell someone I am so busy, I just can't take that on. But then something else comes along that I do know is really important, and I make the time for it, right? So same thing. What's their why, so that you can talk that motivation piece for them. And often, don't we know the busy people are your best candidates? We always think, oh, they're so busy, they won't want to volunteer one more time. We don't want to burn them out if it's a lot of within your own organization. But sometimes your active people in the community or your industry are still very open to being a volunteer for you as well. And make sure there's virtual opportunities and digital opportunities. And one of the main things that volunteers will say why they don't volunteer, because nobody asked them. Those personal invites, often just like membership, when we ask, sometimes they just wanted to be asked. So again, they want to be invited. They want to feel that they count. So don't forget to create those members you never see. What would make a great volunteer opportunity for some of those particular members that might not even realize they want to be involved in that way until they're asked. All right, another thing, now that you've got your volunteers, because we had our profiles, we kind of found our volunteers. Volunteer Hub talks about a best practice. One of the first touch points that our volunteers really have with our organization, it comes in the form of induction and training, right? An effective training of your volunteers can reinforce the volunteers' motivation for even committing in the first place. It's really important that we have orientations. I know I can't see hands here, but board orientation. A lot of organizations do not have a board orientation, especially if you're a smaller organization. That's one of the foundations that are so important, that we have orientation for our board, for our ambassadors. And if you are a state association, a trade association, orientation, again, for all your different committees and task force, it's just important that we put those together. You put them together once, you don't have to keep reinventing it, but it really does let the volunteer know that you take this seriously, right? Because again, when you continue with training opportunities then throughout their experience as a volunteer, we want to keep that going. And during that training, this is when you get to emphasize your mission, right? And really give them the support and the tools they need. A lot of you have membership committees or ambassador committees that help with recruitment or engagement. Have we given them actual strong membership tools to use to be able to talk about mission and to be able to answer questions and things? So it's really important we have orientation, we have training schedules that are written out. And I know a lot of you are going, I am a one-person operation. I'm lucky if I can beg somebody to help me. But this is where I have to get an intern who can create these different tools for you. And when you take that on in a more serious role, they're going to take that volunteering as a more serious opportunity. So it's really important that we are able to let them know what you expect, what they expect they need to be able to voice to you. So, and again, lots of people can help with the training too. Who should really conduct that training? Think about for your organization. If you're a small organization, you may have board members, you may have other committee chairs that are helping with that training. You may be able to do it yourself with your staff if you are lucky to have a staff. So again, I know it seems like a lot of steps, but just like employees, the more you invest in the front end and in your foundation, the more sustainable and solid it will be. So I really can't encourage you enough to add some structure to your volunteer opportunities. And I know you've got to have that pool of people to choose from for volunteers, but when people see that you're taking it very serious and that you have an expectation for it, I think that's where you're going to see it become more serious for your people as well. Okay, so really important there. Training schedules, again, your volunteers may not have the time for it, but I think they, again, if they're serious about it, and I think we've got to make the opportunities. A lot of people I know are still probably shaking your heads going, I'm just looking to find a volunteer. We have to motivate them and show them the why that this opportunity, this volunteer discussion you're having with them is something that's going to benefit them personally or their business. Because if they don't see that, you are begging them to come and help you, where your volunteer opportunity is actually an opportunity, just that, an opportunity for that member. So we have to be able to showcase it as a benefit to them, not as they're doing a favor for us, for you. So that is a key piece, and having that volunteer profile catalog can really help with some of that. So they see their opportunities, and you can talk with members right as they renew or invest with you, the opportunities that are there for them. So again, the more we put into it, I think the better we're going to get out of it as well. Okay, so really key piece to look at. Again, I think within your GrowthZone Chamber Master database system, we have to start tracking our member information about volunteering, right? So again, use those custom fields and create this. Now that you've created these conversations with members, we want to be keeping all this information and our data on our volunteers, as well as all that membership data that's so important that you keep. I always mention membership, one, because I have a passion for it, but two, because membership and volunteering goes together hand in hand. So you can make a heading of your custom fields that would be like volunteer information, or it's membership, or it's a relationship. But again, think about the things that you want to track. This volunteer, who's your top level volunteers? Who are those that you can call on last minute? The primary reason that this member wants to, this company or this person wants to volunteer, we have to be tracking that. So you can run reports when you're looking for volunteers, and you can match up those that will match your profiles. Again, who's got availability? What kind of hours do they share that they could volunteer? Are they looking for short-term or long-term? You may not have an opportunity available right then, but you know this is someone who's willing to volunteer on a short-term basis with us. So we can put that in, and then you can run a report. If you have something, maybe you just need someone to fill in at the front desk for you for a little bit, who can do those short-term opportunities for you, and you can run that report right from your database system. What are their interests? What are their priorities? What are their motivations? Have some custom fields so you can run reports from this information, right? And what causes does their company support? Sometimes you can match that up then when there's a volunteer opportunity that might come up that their company already supports that type of a opportunity. The other thing, lead sources for sustainable volunteers. Where did you get your volunteers from? Did you go out and find them? Did they come to you? Were you at an event talking about it? You want to start to see what brings your volunteers so you can do more of what's working, just like membership. Any of you who sat in my member sessions know these are the same things I talk about for membership, but it's so critical that we understand this volunteer piece as well, because you want to make it easy to recruit your volunteers based on the data that you know about them. And again, just like everything, just like our investments, capture the stories so you can continue the conversations. So document communications in your system on when you've talked about about volunteerism, and then get testimonials. Isn't that the first thing that we do before we download an app, before we spend money on almost anything, is we read reviews? Well, people's time is important as their money. So use reviews on other volunteers and the outcomes they received. And if you can, in your opportunity catalog, you can put the name of the volunteer opportunity, you write a little bit how you're selling that, why it's important to them, and then put a story or a testimonial right there where somebody can read the experience of another volunteer that might kind of fit their DNA. They might be in the same kind of industry, or they're in a small company or a large company, whatever it is, but match up the story or the testimonial to that opportunity, and then they can see those opportunities there. So I know that I've talked about a lot of different things, and I feel all of these things are what really do reignite our volunteerism, because we have to have our foundation strong. We have to know our expectations. And it's really important that we can connect the value so that we stop begging people to volunteer and just feel grateful that somebody volunteered, versus showing them that this is an opportunity for them for the goals that they had when they invested with your organization. We have to have that documented so we know what their goal was when they invested. And this volunteer opportunity is going to help them with that. It could be, again, professional development. It could be building a network. It could be giving back. And it could be just exposure for them or their company, right? So there's a lot of different reasons. But if we don't understand what those reasons are, it's hard for us to have that volunteer conversation with them that adds value to them. Remember, it's what's in it for the member, the with them. It's got to be important to them for them to make time for this, okay? To be a volunteer for you. And I know I'm just about 5 minutes ahead of schedule here already, but I am going to flip real quick to see if there are questions and answers, Amy, that we might want to look at in here. And then I know we've got a few wrap-up slides as well on here. I'm going to go into question and answer, and I don't know, Amy, if you've got, it doesn't look like
I
there's
don't see anything yet in the Q&A.
Okay.
I do know that a lot of people, let's see here. A lot of people shared their email address in the chat, and I think what's going to happen is we're going to have a opportunity at the end for everyone to put their contact information in, to have Shari send you some of, she has something set up. So she can send you something
there. Yes, if you guys, we're going to come back to these slides in just a minute, so bear with me. Right here, if you want to text the word Shari Pash to 22828, I'll definitely get you that Excel spreadsheet there for really diversifying your volunteers and seeing where your gaps are, as well as just other templates or newsletters, webinars I'm doing. So just that sign up. You will not get spammed because I don't have time for that. So feel free to text there. My contact info is right here again. I always love having conversations. I feel part of my role, especially through the pandemic, is to serve as a resource for you all. If there's anything I can brainstorm with you on or help you with, feel free to please just share information or call me to talk about things. So again, that's
we do have a question.
Okay.
Yay.
Yay.
Okay, and so if you do want to receive the spreadsheet from Shari, be sure to text 22828. And additionally, the slide deck will be sent with the recording. It'll be on the page with the on-demand recording. So you'll get that in the next 24 hours. Let's see here. Scrolling. Okay. Are there good pointers? Let's see.
Someone asking about custom fields, I see too.
Well, are there good pointers for like email orientations? Our volunteers are across the country and international.
Yeah, definitely. You can create a training webinar that you do live, like what we're doing here, and then also record it. So yes, you don't have to be local and in person like a local chamber. If you're a state or international organization, you can still do orientations and trainings. We've all learned that Zoom works fantastic, or any other Teams or anything else in there. But yes, do it still, even if you don't have them in person, do it virtually, and then always have it recorded so they can go back and watch that and be open to the discussion that's happened during it. So that's where I think I would not necessarily email, but I would do it digitally or virtually to do an orientation, to do trainings, any of those things.
Awesome. And we have in the resource section on our website, GrowthZone.com, we actually have a content piece about what to include, or getting your board on board. That's actually, that one is how to validate the need for new association or chamber software with your board. That's also there, and a wonderful read, but also how to do a board orientation. So that may have some, it's not an exact fit, but it would certainly probably be helpful with
and that's a lot
this type of process.
Yeah, a lot of the work I'm doing right now is board trainings, board orientations, creating those, that type of thing. There's so many resources out there though. And I see, Amy, someone's asked about best practices for using custom fields to track and info pulling. I love custom fields. So if you're okay, I'm going to tackle that one for a quick second
Oh,
here.
please do. Yeah.
Custom fields, you guys, should be your best friend when it comes to membership and to volunteering, but especially for membership too. This is where you want to track so much information on your member. Like I recommend that everybody has a field that's their primary reason that this member invested. It could be just why, you put in quotations, so that whenever anyone on your team goes to pull that member's record up, they can, before they even talk to that member, they can say, they can see the why that they've invested and address that. Make sure, hey, I see you invested originally with us, especially if they're newer, because you were really looking to have some training and education based on this. How do you feel we're doing with you on that? Have you seen some of the latest training? So that we continue those conversations always. I recommend you get a fiscal year custom field. We need to know when the new money starts for our members, for upgrading tiered memberships, for looking at sponsorship dollars. We should know when their money starts new so we know when to get into their budget process. There are so many. We need to know, let's see, the lead source for sure. And I know GrowthZone has some of these fields in it. If you're still using Chambermaster, it may not, but you add these custom fields. You need to be able to run a report that says the lead source for all of your new members this last year, this last quarter, so you can do more of what's working. And you want the lead source of the sustainable members, not those that come and churn out. Same with your volunteers. I know this is a volunteer piece, so I'll talk on that too. But so then there's so many custom fields like this that, I mean, I've got lists of ideas for custom fields. And then you go to the custom field report, basically, and you can run a report by specific custom fields that you want. But it's a great way. Anything you want to know about your members, track it in a custom field. And then use that. Right now, it should be the DEI. You should be tracking all the diversity measurements for your members. So if somebody in your community comes to ask, you know, how many women-owned businesses do we have? You can start to track that in those custom fields. That's a really critical area right now. How's that?
That was an excellent, yes, that was probably better than I would have even done. So,
well, I just love this area so much, custom fields, because it can just be so changing to our strategies and such. If we have data to use when we recruit, when we engage, when we create volunteerism, all of that, data makes you powerful.
It is. Mm-hmm. Information is knowledge and knowledge is power. So there you go. Here's another one. If you are a staff of one, what would you recommend be the #1 starting point for beginning with volunteers?
Oh, for volunteerism, I would at least think about, what do you need? You're a staff of one. I bet you need help with admin. You need help with recruitment, engagement. So make a list of all the areas you need help in that would make a difference for you being a one-person operation. And then start, if I need help with just in the office even, okay, what positions would be helpful? There's people who are retired who just want to be a part of the business community still, would love to come answer your phones for you. So it's creating a list of what your need is and then what kind of position or person. And then once you see that, do you need somebody who can talk on the phone, right? You need someone who might have a little technology background. So it's important first to figure out what I need. Okay, what kind of position could I create that fits that? And then what's the DNA of the people that would help with that the most? Hopefully that helps. That's a really quick, otherwise that person, feel free to email me direct too. And we can go back and forth a little bit on that.
Perfect. One of the things that when we do, again, we have excellent resources on our website, growthzone.com. And that's also where you can go and see GrowthZone in action. So there's a couple options on that homepage. But one of the things that we've come across, we did a piece on young professionals, and some people call them millennials, whatever you want to call. There's been a lot of back and forth, and then it got to, how do you get them engaged? And it got to the point where people didn't even want to talk about it anymore. We did research, and this was a little while ago, but it said two things, and one resonated with me because that's what Shari brought up, was that the reason, a lot of them said the reason they didn't volunteer is simply because no one asked. And so again, that's what Shari said, and that's the truth. And then two, they prefer micro projects, so micro volunteer gigs. And so that's something to keep in mind and figure out, maybe there's small projects that you could hand off. And that's a way to get them engaged, get some stuff done. So something to get, food for thought. I'll leave it at that.
And they might volunteer more with if those micros were a great experience for them, and they at least got oriented in a little bit, and it was a positive experience. They might be willing to commit to a board position or a longer position for volunteering. That's so perfect, yeah. And you guys, I see a lot of emails coming here. If anyone, someone's having issues with that 22828. Is that not working real well? Because I was gonna say, if you can put it in there, that's really helpful, because that already has your emails where I can just upload it really easy for. So if you are having trouble with that, please do put that back in the, see if it's working again. Gosh, I test it so often. So I hope
some
it did
people
work
are
for
saying it
some.
worked, and some people it's not. So it's not.
Right.
Not
Either
consistent.
way, we'll make sure you get the Excel for sure. Okay.
Right.
And I'll look
Absolutely.
through the chat there.
There's also, and I'm seriously, at this point, I know it's ridiculous. I'm not really trying to push the resources that much, but we do have a piece on there for young professionals, and it's actually for organizations to use to market to young professionals. And a lot of it talks about how the different things they can do with that organization to build their resume. And that's so huge right now. And so that's something to consider. How can you help them? You know, it has to be what's in it for me. Great. Here's what's in it for you. So you can check that out as well.
You guys have a lot of great resources. It's amazing. I'll Google search a topic quite often, and it's your documents that come up almost always.
Oh, good. I love that. But yeah, so I promise it's like at this point, I'm trying to like really be helpful. It's not be overwhelming.
Oh, yeah. No, the stuff's really helpful too. So yeah, but any other questions? I'm looking in the chat more than the question area. Yep. All right. Well, if there are, where's the resource on what benefit for them? That was the one you mentioned, maybe.
Let me.
Good. I hope everyone did find a tip or two, a reminder you came out with. I know volunteer was a really open, wide topic. I hope everyone is leaving with a good tip or note that you took, just something to add value for your hour here. I really appreciate you guys joining me and Amy in GrowthZone. I'll please show the next slide. Oops, hang on. This one here, maybe I'll just go through them all again. That one. That one.
Let's see.
Well, thank you, Lucinda. Elaine. Yeah, I'm not sure which one they're wanting, so I'm sorry. I'm just going to kind of go back and forth. Probably that one doesn't tell you much. This one. Maybe that one. Oh, thank you, guys.
I'm not sure where we are on that. I think that I've covered what we need, just a reminder that the recording is going to be sent to the email address that you used to register with, as will the CAE certificate. So what else do you have, Shari? I have so many, I do this every time. I have so many screens open.
I know. No, I think we're good. If there's no other questions, I'll definitely get the chat and do those emails to you guys, and we'll follow up. And please feel free to use me as a resource to brainstorm or bounce an idea off from, or ask a challenging question or anything. Okay.
Yeah. What's your website again?
Shari at Shari Pash. Well, that's my email. ShariPash.com is my website.
Email.
And then my email is Shari. Here, I'll just put that up. Shari at Shari Pash. I try to make it really easy.
That is really easy. And her name is Shari.
Yep.
Awesome. Okay. Well, again, thank you for everyone that has taken the time out of their busy schedules to join us. And additionally, we are going to be having another webinar here in a couple of weeks with Amanda Kaiser. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. You have a VIP invitation from me right there. Okay. So that's going to be later in the month of September. Please have a safe and wonderful weekend. Enjoy your time. Probably most of you are really busy with work stuff anyway. But thanks so much again, Shari. We appreciate it. And I think that's about it today. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.